There is my alarm. That means it is time to get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jessica. I'm the community manager at Pen Pal Schools. I'm going to be facilitating our conversation today. We are joined by Hanna Dudich from Ukraine, and shortly we'll be joined by Leticia Citizen from the USA, who is an educator working in a real school and dealing with her job, which is a lot more important than joining us today. So she will be online as soon as she can. I'm going to give Anna a moment to introduce yourself, and then we will dive into our conversation here today.
Hello, everybody. I'm really glad to be here with you, and thank you to Pen Pal Schools team for providing such an opportunity to have a conversation and to speak about supporting international mindedness in every class. My name is Hana, and I teach English in Ukraine in an ordinary school in the center of Ukraine in the city of Kropivnitsky. And also I am a vice principal in my school, responsible for STEM integration, for integrating STEM subjects into curriculum.
Awesome. Thank you. So excited to learn from you today, and hopefully here's some more resources for supporting international mindedness in STEM. And perfect timing, Latisha. Welcome. I'm so glad you are able to join us today. We are just getting started. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, please excuse my tardiness. I'm sorry, I was stuck in LA traffic, of course. So my name is Leticia Citizen. I am what is called an I-4 coach in Beverly Hills Unified School District in California. And so basically what that is we are sort of like an instructional technology TOSA coach. But instead of just focus on instruction, we have the 4 I's, which is instruction, innovation, individualization, and I always forget the other I's. I'll have to say that one later. But this is my 20th year of teaching, and my 2nd year out of the classroom. Otherwise, I taught 2 years kinder, 7 years first grade, and 9 years fifth grade, where I've had an opportunity to really get my students involved and engaged in global education and connecting with others and just expanding their perspective on the world and how they can impact the world and help the world as well. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to hear from both of you guys today. I'm going to move quickly through our introduction here so we can dive into this conversation. But as you heard, we have a lot of experience here for you today, sharing tips, resources, and strategies to support international mindedness in every class in your school. A little housekeeping before we get started. At the bottom of your screen, there is a chat window. I've just sent a chat message. Feel free to introduce yourselves, get to know the other people who are here with us today. I'm also going to be sharing a link to our slide deck at the end of this presentation, and I will be sharing some other links in the chat for you. If you have a question during this webinar, we are saving some time at the end for Q&A, but we also always try to make sure to address your questions in our recap blog post. So drop your questions in our Q&A folder. There's a specific place for Q&A. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen. Don't hold on to your questions in your head. As soon as you have a question, just drop it down there. It makes it easier for us to answer all of your questions. This webinar is being recorded today. You're going to get an email and a recap tomorrow. Let's go ahead and jump in. First, I want to know who is here. A lot of people registered for this webinar, teachers, administrators. I am going to initiate this poll here for you so we can just take a minute and find out who are you and what are you interested in learning about today? This will help us kind of tailor our conversation. We have a ton of resources for you. So are you currently connecting your students with peers around the world? Do you feel comfortable bringing authentic and diverse global connections into your classroom? And what content area are you hoping to hear about the most today? And you can select multiple content areas there. So we're going to leave this open for just a few more seconds, and then I'll share the responses so everybody can see them. It looks like we have about half of our audience so far is already connecting students globally. That is awesome to see. And almost everybody feels very confident about bringing diverse perspectives into your classroom, which is great. Ooh, and people want to learn about a lot: foreign languages, math, English language arts. take another couple of seconds here to submit your responses, and then we'll get started. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for voting. Let's take a look at these results together. So not everybody here is connecting students globally. About 55% of you are not bringing connections into your classrooms yet. You are definitely going to leave today with some resources to make that happen. And I'm happy to see that almost everybody feels confident bringing authentic connections into your classroom. That's great. If you don't feel confident, I hope you will feel confident by the end of today. And foreign languages was what people wanted to learn the most about, developing international mindedness in foreign language classes. Next up, English language arts, and then history. That is not what I expected people to say. I thought we were going to hear everybody asking about math and science. So great. Well, we have a lot of resources for you. Let's dive into our conversation here and get started just with a simple, why are we talking about this today? Who are we and why are we talking about this? So on Pen Pal Schools, we connect students around the world with their peers through collaborative project-based learning. That is how we met these two wonderful educators that you're learning from today. And on Pen Pal Schools, students are connecting and collaborating through topics that are aligned to math, science, history, foreign language. Every subject area is able to find a topic on Pen Pal Schools to bring those global connections into their classroom. So we've had a chance to learn firsthand from educators how to make this happen. And so we want to bring that conversation to you so that global connections are happening throughout your school all year long and not just in one special contest. So what is international mindedness? This comes from a social and emotional learning skill. So social emotional learning, we were actually, Anna and I were just talking at the beginning here before we got started about how much social and emotional learning is being emphasized in education right now. And international mindedness fits right under that category. So if you're not focusing on international mindedness in your social and emotional learning toolkit, I encourage you to do so. And this is a quote from an IB administrator in Japan, and I really like it because it emphasizes this idea that international mindedness is a frame of mind. It's a curiosity about the world and an openness towards things other. You don't have to be in an international context to develop this kind of mindset. You may have seen in our title slide a picture of a classroom in Ghana, actually, is where those students were, with one computer. So technology does not develop international mindedness. Connecting with the world does not alone develop international mindedness. It is a mindset and a curiosity. And so that is something that you can develop in every content area. Let's dive right in here to question 2 and get into the nitty gritty because of time. So how do you develop international mindedness in math and science classes? Anybody want to start with this one?
So I can start if you want to.
Perfect.
If it's okay. Actually, as I told in the beginning, I'm a teacher of English language arts, but I supervise STEM division in our school. And several years ago, we decided to introduce Pen Pal schools, not only at the lessons of language arts, but also to the lessons of science and math. And our first successful project was A World of Geometry. And you may ask me how can you develop international mindedness at the lessons of math, at the lessons of geometry? Well, to tell you the truth, it was kind of eye-opening for me as well, and for the teacher who teaches mathematics at our school. Because when, according to the rules of the project, the children had to come up with the idea of their geometrical problem. So they had to create a problem and then to share it in Pen Pal schools, chat with their pen pals, and try to solve each other's problems. And whenever the students created their problems, they, of course, referred to some ideas or notions typical to their country. For example, kids who were from Italy made up a problem, a geometrical problem, to calculate the perimeter of pizza. Those, for example, who spoke about, who were from other countries, spoke about something more typical to their country. So through, for example, geometry, kids learned not only about area and perimeter, they also learned about each other's cultures. And also another idea which struck not only me, but also the teacher of mathematics, was that even such simple things like mathematical figures and even numbers are written in a different way. The problems are written down in a different way in different countries. The solution of a problem, it may differ from country to country, though you will get similar answers, but you will come to this answer through different calculations. So it also develops international mindedness. And kids were really impressed with this experience, because they understood that even in science, you can develop international mindedness, and you can look at somebody's culture. You can look at mathematics from the point of view of somebody else, from other cultural perspective.
Yeah, something you said I hear from teachers all the time, that they're surprised at how curious their students are about how other kids around the world are learning and solving math problems. Kids are very aware that we write numbers differently and we interact with math differently, and they're so curious about that. So I'm glad that you included that. Latisha, how about you? Any tips or strategies for developing international mindedness in math and science classes?
One thing that kind of naturally happened when I was in the classroom with my fifth graders is that my students, because we Skyped a lot with other classrooms, once they started to notice like maybe like a hurricane. So like currently there's the hurricane going on in Florida, and it's hit with the Bahamas and things like that. So at the time that I was in the classroom, my students had realized that like hurricanes were impacting some of the schools that we had connected with. And so from that, we started to study like weather patterns, and then it just kind of expanded on its own by the students like taking over and being very curious, like you were saying. But then we started to look at other weather patterns that were happening around the world with other schools that we were connecting with. And then that helped them to really look at like, well, what does that mean when this happens? And, you know, especially like when you hear someone saying, oh, you have to evacuate. Well, how easy is that for everyone to just things and like evacuate? What does that do in terms of like, now it impacts their parents who have to work, and what if they don't have the money for this, and how does that impact the kid? So through these what do we want to call them, like acts of nature, right? It really got my students to thinking about like, what does that do to the kids that they were connecting with, but not only those students, but then the kids just who live in that area, period. And so that it was nice because it was a natural you know, like occurrence for just because we had made these connections, and then they started to think about someone other than themselves, which was really nice. But we did it through science by looking at weather patterns, which is one of our standards anyways. So sometimes these things just kind of like happen on their own, and you have to wonder like, you know, where do we go from here? But let the students take control. They will take the driver's wheel and direct you into what direction they want to go, while still being aware and learning about others and what that really does, and how does that impact them as well.
Yeah. Oh, it makes me so excited to think about this, you know, an authentic global connection really being that spark of curiosity, so that even when you're in science learning about weather patterns, students are aware and wondering, you know, yes, there's this natural disaster happening in another place, but now they're curious about, well, how does that impact the people there? And so using a global connection to spark that curiosity and to make everything that you're talking about in your math and science classes really relevant. You know, math is everywhere. It's a universal language, and so is science. So making that really relevant. We have some more resources that are in the slide deck. So for example, the link to the World of Geometry project here. I also want, oh dear, I think I just stopped sharing my slide deck, you guys. I'm really sorry about that. Let's open this back up again. It's because I clicked into the topic itself. Well, the links are there, which is what I'm trying to show you so that you can actually go in and see that world of geometry topic, and as well this robotics topic. So if you cannot see my slide deck anymore, can you just please let me know in the chat? I really appreciate that. But Anna, do you want to talk a little bit about robotics and what your students' experience was like when they learned about robotics with peers all around the world?
Yeah. This example I really love because when we enrolled in robotics project on the Pentel schools, kids started discussing the questions about the impact of artificial intelligence and what can computers do and what can't computers do, how they can replace humans, for example, in what spheres and areas. And it was really interesting to note that kids who joined this conversation, they came from different countries. The countries where technology was on different level of development. For example, in some countries, kids said that they do not have access to technology, for example, at school. There may be 1 or 2 computers only, and not on the daily basis and not one-to-one. In some other countries, there would be like one-to-one computer or tablets for every student or whatever. And some kids may even not have the access to technology at home. And it was, for example, really striking for some kids from countries with more developed technologies and with more possibilities, even to learn the fact that not everybody is that lucky, not everybody has got that possibility. And then from the question of having a smartphone in your pocket, kids moved to something more serious. They started discussing advantages of having technology, for example, in medicine. If you live in a country where technology is very well developed, you can get more medical help. And then it led to another topic, like what can we do to provide, for example, equal education, equal healthcare possibilities and opportunities for people from coming from different backgrounds, from different countries with different level of the development of economics. So that was really amazing to see how kids start getting to those from simple questions to those more complicated and difficult ideas, and being empathetic, feeling empathy to those who experience maybe difficult living conditions or who live in different situations. And the answer was education. So if you want to have technology in medicine, if you want to have one-to-one computing at school, you need good education. So no matter in what country you live. So that was really impressive. I was really impressed that kids got to this, to understanding it themselves, actually, with the help of questions from the project.
Mm-hmm. I've heard both of you mention this now too, that the idea of bringing an international perspective into your classroom, like I've done it again now, bringing an international perspective into your classroom is kind of also opening the door for more social and emotional skills like empathy, collaboration, curiosity. So again, like social emotional learning is never isolated. Social emotional learning the skills always happen together. So I just wanted to highlight that there. Let's dive into our next question here. And I know the question is how to develop international mindedness in ELA and history classes, but because so many people wanted to learn about foreign languages as well, if you have any examples or tips for supporting foreign language learning through global connections, this would be a great time to share that. I'm just looking at our time here. Anybody want to start? Maybe Latisha?
Well, with ELA, I mean, well, in my classroom, ELA, we kind of do ELA and history all together. But one thing that I really loved on Pen Pal Schools is that it had, there was a lesson about poetry and just poetry around the world. And so that was a great way for students to learn about poets from just around the world and connecting that way, and just learning about language and how beautiful it could be written, even like when it's translated, and just learning from others. So, you know, that I know that's not fully like foreign language that I think that the teachers are asking for in particular, but
It's
just
a good
having,
example still.
right, because then the students got to see the poems written in their original language and then how it translated over. But again, just being aware and learning how like language is so important and how it doesn't matter in what way that you say it or what language you say it, that it still translates into this beautiful way of expression, that it is the voice of the person who's speaking, and so acknowledging that person, and then that actually got my students again curious about who the poets were, and then digging deeper into like learning about where that person was from, and then learning about the country in itself, and just again, like through a lot of the lessons that are on pen pal schools, it really allows my students to step out of the me and then step into the we. And so that's something that my students and I really talk about, like flipping that M to a W, and so understanding that the world is bigger than you, because they're not by fault of themselves, but they also indulge, right? And so it's a learning to take them out of, hey, there are people out there, and while they seem so far away, they're yet so close, and you have all these great connections. And poetry was just one way to do that, and it was amazing because it drew in, those language skills and allowing them to analyze and interpret, but then still make these wonderful connections and learning about others and what's going on through that. So.
Yeah, that's a great strategy, I think, for history, ELA, and foreign language classes to bring in international mindedness, is just like looking at the text that you're bringing into your classroom, and how can you bring in authentic texts from different countries and different perspectives, instead of maybe reading from the same textbook or something that you do every day.
Those primary sources are vital, and so it's nice to bring those in. Even just having diary entries and interpret those, that's just another way that allows them to step outside of that textbook, right? And then into like someone else's world and someone else's voice, and amplifying that. So definitely something to check out.
Yeah. Anna, how about you? Any tips or strategies?
Yeah, I just totally agree with Latisha here. And here you can see an example how we tried to connect textbooks, our ordinary textbooks, and resources, for example, from pen pal schools. There was a text in our textbook called Fitting In, about students who either come to school from another city, or who come to study from another country, and they try to fit in a new community. And instead of just working on the text in the textbook, we saw a great opportunity to develop this topic a little bit further. And we joined the project on pen pal schools called Immigration in the 21st Century. And it fitted into our curriculum really naturally, because it totally corresponded to our textbook material. It was on the same topic, but it allowed us to go a little bit further. And instead of just reading about some people whom you don't know, maybe even imaginary figures from the textbook, students watched a video on the pen pal schools website about a real girl who had real problems fitting in, who had to deal with real issues about her and her family. And then she had a possibility to chat with real people, with real students from different countries, and exchange ideas based on what they first saw in the textbook. So that is what we try to do. Actually, we have been trying to do it for several years already. Whenever we start a new school year, we look at all the topics which we have to cover in our English textbook, and then we try to find a project which would be similar to the topic that we are going to cover, and join this project later. And it gives us an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper, and it's a perfect opportunity for students to use their foreign language skills in the natural context.
Yeah, it also reminded me of another great tip, which is letting your content be your gateway into more international mindedness, and really looking for opportunities within your content to leverage those different perspectives, whether through the resources you're using or finding some authentic connections around the world. You'll see in the slide deck here, I'm going to go quickly through, there are more examples from student conversations on Pen Pal Schools specifically, but they'll give you an idea of how students are connecting and how those global connections really are not just developing international mindedness, but those other social emotional learning skills. So you'll see empathy, you'll see reflection, all of those things in students' writing as they're examining content-specific topics. We have just a few more minutes here, and so quickly, I want to share some resources to develop international mindedness. I'm going to share this slide deck in a minute here. There's some resources on this slide. Pen Pal Schools, of course, we would love for you to join our global learning community. There's going to be a lot of Pen Pal challenges available on Pen Pal Schools this year, which fit really nicely into different content areas. And teaching the SDGs is another really great way to bring international mindedness into your content area. The Sustainable Development Goals really do align with different content areas. So there's a guide to help you make some sense of those. And then the world's largest lesson. I don't know, Anna, do you want to introduce that one?
Yes, actually, this initiative is also connected with SDGs because this is the worldwide, let's say so, initiative, and there are a lot of projects and topics introduced on the website, and they help teachers to introduce global goals to their classrooms, no matter what subjects you teach. This resource helps you to find partners also in different projects connected with SDGs, and helps you to see where you can integrate studying SDGs into your curriculum.
Awesome. It looks like we have people in the chat who are loving the world's largest lesson. And Latisha has just added some more resources there for you in the chat, which I will also add to the slide deck for everybody. Do you want to share what some of these resources are?
Yeah, so definitely Skype, and you can actually access, Microsoft has a website called Skype in the Classroom. So if you go to education.microsoft.com, they have tons of connections across the world where you can connect with classrooms and teachers and authors. There's projects there that are and it's all free, which is pretty amazing. And you can connect them through Pen Pals Schools as well. You have Flipgrid Pals or Flipgrid Pals on Flipgrid, where you can actually go and see teachers around the world and connect with them that way, you know, especially with the time difference. Sometimes that doesn't always work out. So Flipgrid allows you to record those videos and have like that slow chat back and forth between your peers and connecting our students. And then lastly, Edmodo is really a safe platform for classrooms and students to go ahead and connect, not only to just have like that immediate conversation, but extend the lessons beyond that and just continue that connection. So those are definitely three big places besides Pen Pal Schools, of course, where I love connecting my students and making relationships. I mean, you know, creating relationships and allowing them to extend their mindfulness.
I love the way that you said that too. It's about creating relationships. So not just connecting with the class, but really creating a learning partnership so that you can continue to learn together in all content areas. I have just shared this slide deck in the chat. I see a lot of people are popping in to check it out, which is wonderful. I want to share a few more ideas with you before we let you go today. So some tips for educators who are already new to connecting who are new to connecting their students globally. You'll find some tips in our slide deck here. Some really simple ways to get started is thinking about how your students are learning new information and taking that research portion of their inquiry process global, creating projects together with students around the world, sharing student work with a global audience. Those are some softer ways that you can think about developing international mindedness. And then you can click both of these links to see more. I realize I'm not sharing the screen with you guys. I'm so sorry.
Hey, Jessica, can I add to where you said
yes,
that,
please.
like that whole thing about sharing their work with others, it really widens their audience, and it helps, at least for my students in my experience, where my students now will create, not with because the teacher said or because I'm only going to share with the teacher. They actually get to share now with an audience in mind. So it's nice to hear when my students will come in and say, so who's my audience today? And I'll say, well, who do you want?
Oh, I love that.
Right? And it's like, oh, I'm going to, connect with that second grade class that we connected with in France. Okay. And then that helps them now understand that as an author, what words am I going to use? Or if I'm going to include images, what does that look like now? Because I know that my audience is a second grader, right? I'm going to explain more as opposed to, I'm going to connect with someone who's a 10th grader over here. It really helps them now start to process things and understand from a writer's perspective, but keeping in mind their audience is really key. And now they have others to share and they're going to get feedback now. So now they're not dependent on me or they're just their classmates. Now they have a wider audience to get more feedback. So thank you for being here. That's really excellent.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot at Pen Pal schools, and we like to think if us as adults working in the world, if we were using email, but our emails never had a send button, would we continue to correspond via email and spend our days writing emails to get our message across? No, we're not. If no one's seeing it, then what's the point of writing? And so students are learning to write, so they need to practice writing. But yeah, it is amazing what an authentic audience will do for students. You got this. You are supported in your journey to connect your classroom and bring more international perspectives into your classroom. If you want to join the Pen Pal Schools community, there's an opportunity to join a free contest this month, our personal essay contest. The link to join is right here in the slide deck for you. And then we're actually going to be doing a kickoff webinar for that tomorrow. It's a short 15-minute little webinar where we'll go over all of the instructions for joining that contest. But a great way to bring international mindedness into, especially an ELA classroom, and invite your students into this global writing workshop where they are going to be workshopping narrative or descriptive essays with peers around the world. So I hope you will join us for that. I also hope you will join the Pen Pal Schools community. We have been connecting students through collaborative topics, which are available in every single content area. And just for attending our webinar here today, you can get a discount to bring Pen Pal Schools to your school or district. So if you're interested in learning more or claiming that discount, please fill out this form. We'll be in touch with you to give you some more information and help bring this to your school. I'm going to leave this screen up for a minute, but first let me just check out of here and see what our QA. Look, we have no questions. We had a few questions come up in the chat, but we addressed them during the conversation. So great. I'm going to leave this last slide up so that everybody can access our discount form to get more information about joining the Pen Pal Schools community. Any last thoughts before we sign off here today from either of you? Tips, resources, or ideas? Any last parting words you want to leave about international mindedness?
Just don't have fear. Just let it just let it naturally occur and make those connections. As the teacher, take that step, take that leap, and connect the classes and just watch it grow. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch your students make those connections. But it starts with us.
I would like just to add that even if your native language, your first language is not English, don't worry, cooperate with teachers of English or find a project on Pen Pal Schools in Spanish, for example, or there is the one in French, if I'm not mistaken, yes? And just try to open up the doors of your classroom to a wider world, and you will see the benefit of it very soon, because it works really great.
Yeah, I love that idea too of just get started. Just take one little step towards globally connecting your curriculum, your classroom, and I feel like you'll pull a little thread of curiosity and then just keep pulling it and see what happens, and enjoy the opportunity to learn with your students. We had one last question in the chat here about time zone differences. I'm going to share a resource with you in the webinar recap video because I need to find the correct link, but it's what I use when I'm scheduling calls with people in different time zones to really clarify that we're meeting at an appropriate time for everybody. But I think if you want to connect and collaborate and not have to deal with time zones, asynchronous collaboration is the way to go. That is how we connect students on Pen Pal Schools, but that's how you can facilitate connections on other platforms as well. Basically, it means you log in and participate in your class period, and then when your partner class or your pen pals log in, they participate in their same time zone, and you'll see their answers the next time you're in class. So if you don't want to deal with time zones, asynchronous opportunities are the way to go. And yes, we are going to be sending all of this information in an email. We are well over time here, but I thank you guys for sticking with us and continuing to ask us questions in the chat. Thank you both for joining us. I always love learning from you. This conversation could have been 2 hours and it would not have been enough time.
Thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful morning and a wonderful evening. And if you want your students to connect with their students, come join us on Pen Pal Schools.
Bye.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.